This is the story of a university student who was followed to Britain by a man obsessed with her. That same man later suffocated her with a face mask and then stuffed her inside a large suitcase. In July 2022, Hina Bashir, a 21-year-old student of business management at Coventry University's London campus, went missing after paying a visit to Mohammed Arslan, a warehouse worker, at his home in Ilford, East London. Days later, her body was discovered stashed in a huge bag in the forest near Upminster. Evidence found by the police suggested that 27-year-old Arslan had developed an obsession with Mrs. Bashir. Jurors were informed that the defendant had followed Mrs. Bashir a few months after she moved to Britain to pursue her studies, and that the two had grown up in the same village in Pakistan. Prior to his upcoming Bailey trial in November 2021, Arslan entered a guilty plea to her manslaughter. However, he denies murder and tampering with the legal system by hiding her body. According to prosecutor Gareth Patterson KC, on the evening of July 11th, the victim went to Arslan's residence to retrieve a few belongings she had left behind when relocating. However, she did not leave the house alive. According to Mr. Patterson, the defendant set out from his house the next morning, dragging a suitcase with him which carried Hina Bashir's dead body. He took a lift from a taxi driver who resided in his house and headed towards an industrial area by the EM25 at Upminster, near an establishment where he worked as a warehouse employee. After stepping out of the taxi, he hauled his suitcase to the side of a lane and hid it in some bushes. In the days that followed, he left the suitcase stashed there. The defendant's bag was discovered and opened after Mrs. Bashir's concerned friends and family informed authorities, exposing the squeezed-in body of Mrs. Bashir. Mr. Patterson told jurors that the doctor discovered a face mask pushed inside her mouth during the pathological examination. Asphyxiation has been evaluated as the cause of her death, as her breathing had stopped due to the face mask being shoved into her mouth. A plethora of evidence was discovered by investigators that linked Arslan to her murder. He denied it at first, but the court heard. The victim's blood was reportedly discovered on his bed and bedsheet, according to the jury. Similar face masks were found at his residence, and phone records revealed that the defendant had Mrs. Bashir's phone and had been accessing her messages and pictures in the hours after her last visit. The taxi driver admitted to the court that he took Arslan, who had a hefty suitcase, to the industrial estate early the following morning. According to Mr. Patterson, Arslan was seen on CCTV leaving his home with the bag and then dragging it down the lane, where it was subsequently found. Apart from that, Arslan's shoes had soil from the deposition site, and his DNA was confirmed on the suitcase's handle. Mr. Patterson added, "All the evidence proved what the defendant has finally accepted today, that he was responsible for the killing," making reference to his previous guilty plea. Police discovered evidence on Arslan's phone following his arrest, indicating that he had gotten close to the victim when she was a girl growing up in Pakistan. According to Mr. Patterson, the defendant insisted to the police later on that the two of them had no relationship. But after translating the records on his phone, the police discovered that he had been contacting Hina Bashir on a regular basis, confessing his love for her. He allegedly mentioned wanting her to be his wife and starting a family with her. The court was informed that there were other texts indicating she was engaged to someone else. Following his purportedly shocked reaction to the news, Arslan allegedly sent messages implying that he believed she had cheated on him. More recently, in 2021, it was reported that Arslan was attempting to get in touch with Mrs. Bashir by pretending to be a woman. According to Mr. Patterson, the police also discovered a significant amount of photoshopped or otherwise altered images of Hina Bashir on his phone. They discovered collages made of her image as well as images of her, to which love hearts had been added. It appears from the evidence that he was infatuated with her. The court was informed that the defendant's intense love for the woman persisted as he moved to Britain, and that he referred to her as his fiancée. Mr. Patterson added, "It seems, though, that Hina Bashir did not want to be with him, and that she was actually in a relationship with another young man after moving here. He received a life sentence with a minimum of 20 years of imprisonment at the Old Bailey. In an impact statement, Mrs. Bashir's father, Bashir Khan, mentioned his gorgeous, vivacious daughter and said, "Animals would have treated my daughter better. He gave her such abhorrent and vicious treatment." A truck driver found skeletal remains of a human in a box of Duncan Bridge Road in a rural, wooded area of Waycross, Georgia, in December 1988. The remains were that of a young child and were discovered within a duffel bag that was stuffed inside a suitcase, which was then placed in an old television cabinet. Investigators determined that the child had passed away 1 to 2 months before her body was discovered. The youngster was a black female between the age of 3 and 4 approximately. She had black hair, tied back into a ponytail, and held atop her head with a brown rubber band. She was wearing a white knit pullover shirt with a red pony insignia on the upper left side of her chest, white thermal pajama bottoms with maroon trim, and a disposable diaper at the time was found. Although the Jane Doe had pierced ears, no earrings were found with her remains. To support the investigation, local detectives collaborated with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. A significant amount of investigation work was put into the case, looking through hundreds of leads and tips to identify the girl. Regrettably, there were not many strong leads to follow. Therefore, the investigation quickly fizzled out. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was then contacted by police in 2009, looking for assistance. In an effort to find probable matches for missing children, the center has throughout the years carried out a number of analytical searches and DNA testing with its dependable partners. In 2012, the center's Team Adam was sent to Georgia, where they had a case review meeting with investigators. Team Adam coordinated efforts to produce a new facial reconstruction while offering the GBI technical assistance, using a CT scan of the kid's skull and digitally generated photos of the pajamas the youngster was found wearing. They finished the little girl's facial reconstruction. The photos were utilized to make a poster and highlight the case on Help ID Me. Their Facebook page committed to sharing details regarding unidentified children. 2020 saw Othram in the Woodlands, Texas, collect forensic evidence from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. After obtaining an appropriate DNA extract from the evidence, Othram's experts employed forensic-grade genome sequencing to create a thorough DNA profile of the unidentified girl. The DNA profile was successfully completed and sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. A group of forensic genetic genealogists collaborated with investigators to come up with potential leads for the case. Their efforts, along with other leads and suggestions that emerged as a result of the case's heightened prominence, contributed to identifying the young girl. The FBI stated in January 2023 that they had received a tip from a member of the public who claimed to have seen the girl from the facial reconstruction composite from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Police were informed by the person that they thought the young girl was Kenyatta Odom. To find out if this was indeed the case, a thorough inquiry was then started. Kenyatta Odom, age 5, was positively identified as Whitecross Jane Doe following genetic relative DNA testing. Investigators apprehended Kenyatta's mother, Evelyn Odom, also known as Zemeka Luciana, 56-year-old at the time, and her ex-boyfriend, Ulysses Sanders, 61 years old, both of Albany, Georgia, on November 10, 2023. They were placed under arrest and accused of homicide, first-degree cruelty to children, aggravated assault, domestic violence, and hiding a body. This is a case that has touched so many of us at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, stated Angeline Hartman, the organization's director of communications. The atrocious details are nearly unbearable, and we have always wished for truth. We are aware that overcoming these obstacles is not a simple task. Over the past 35 years, countless investigators have worked tirelessly, and we are proud to support all the agencies involved in solving this case. Kenyatta's image that helped with her identification was created by artist Colin McNally, a supervisor of forensic imaging. It is an overwhelming feeling when one of our images assists in the identification of a child, McNally said. These images are intended to capture the attention of someone who may recognize the person, and they have proven significant in solving cases. With over 650 cases of unidentified child remains, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is presently assisting law enforcement. According to GBI Special Agent in Charge Jason Seacrest, to think that a parent actually tossed this child basically into an illegal trash site off the side of the road. Thinking about what that child went through is heart-wrenching. People usually don't reach that point in a split second. To think of the life that that child had to live through even up to that point, and then to just be thrown away. According to Seacrest, the world of technology has evolved so much that he is confident more cases similar to Kenyatta's will be resolved, but many of them still require that last crucial piece. Working, investigation, and bringing it to a conclusion is not a piece of cake. Indeed, it requires the expertise and commitment of the agents and investigators who work on it. But sometimes we need a tip, as Seacrest stated. To cross the finish line, we need that precise piece of information. Thus, in any case, please call the tip line if you believe you have that information. A few hours before to her demise, 22-year-old Huguely Love was questioned about her relationship with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, George Huguely. "Same old stuff," Love responded. "Everything is fine." Nevertheless, that night, Huguely would be busting through her front door in a drunken rage and beat her to death. Huguely Love's murder not only stunned the whole nation, but George Huguely too, who was reportedly so inebriated that he couldn't recall what he'd done. Upon more investigation, several red flags regarding their relationship were discovered. Huguely had previously been aggressive towards Love. Following one of their breakups, he even informed her in an email that he should have killed her. So on the evening of May 3, 2010, what precisely transpired between Huguely Love and George Huguely, which led to her tragic demise? This is the disturbing tale of George Huguely, from his privileged upbringing to the moment he killed his girlfriend out of rage. George Huguely, who was born on September 17, 1987, came from a wealthy and accomplished family. Huguely's great-grandfather established a thriving company, Gallagher and Huguely, in 1912, and it has been supplying construction materials to the Washington, D.C. area since long. Because of the company's success, the family was able to invest in real estate and racehorses, as well as gain access to yacht and country clubs. Huguely attended esteemed private schools. His mother worked as a part-time model at Saks Fifth Avenue, while his father was a self-employed investor. According to reports, Huguely started attending the elite Landon School in the 9th grade and soon established a reputation for his boisterous self-confidence. Huguely once bet his freshman year football coach that he would make a big play in return for his fiancee's kiss. Huguely then made the play. Similarly, he once nicked his lacrosse coach's car keys. Huguely drove the car onto the lacrosse field, to his teammates' hysterical laughing. Though not as good as he had been in high school, George Huguely still continued to play lacrosse at the University of Virginia. Furthermore, he began displaying signs of rage and drinking. During a family vacation in Palm Beach in 2008, Huguely got into a quarrel with his father on their yacht. Huguely threw himself into the water from the yacht and wouldn't come back. He was taken into custody that same year after a policeman noticed him stumbling intoxicatedly in traffic. Huguely used derogatory remarks and threats against her when she confronted him. The officer had to use her taser to restrain him, and Huguely subsequently entered a guilty plea to allegations of resisting arrest and public intoxication. Huguely's lawyer acknowledged that due to his excessive drunkenness, he was unable to recall saying or doing any of those things. Huguely, in the meantime, had begun dating Huguely Love, a lacrosse player, However, their relationship was about to horrifically end. George Huguely and Yeardley Love had an unstable relationship, and they had been dating on and off for 2 years. They frequently had violent confrontations due to Huguely's habitual drinking. He attacked a player in his sleep in February 2009, believing the teammate had walked Love home. At a lacrosse victory celebration a year later, Huguely choked Love. Love cried out for help, and a player from North Carolina heard her. "I'm having trouble breathing," she said, as Huguely rested his hands on her neck. After that, Love left Huguely and returned home to Baltimore. However, rumors claim that they kept going to the same social events and were spotted together in the weeks preceding Love's departure. A friend claimed that Huguely was attempting to win her back following the assault. However, tensions persisted behind closed doors. "I should have killed you," Huguely said in an irate email regarding a past relationship to Love on April 30, 2010. Despite exchanging furious emails, the pair started to mend their differences. They were spotted holding hands on May 2nd. But by then, Huguely had been drinking continuously after his senior lacrosse game for about 30 hours. Huguely consumed between 45 to 50 drinks during that period, according to his lawyer, who later stated that a realistic estimate would be that. Huguely went to Love's apartment at approximately 11:45 p.m. that night, and things immediately got out of hand. Prosecutors later alleged that things almost immediately turned aggressive between the two, despite Huguely's earlier admission that he went to visit Love only for a chat. Huguely, according to the prosecution, kicked down Love's door and then reached inside to unlatch it, and with that he grabbed Love and pounded her against the wall, leaving her bleeding on the floor. Love's body was discovered by her roommate a few hours later. Huguely was then promptly located by police. Admitting to having visited Love, he maintained that their interactions amounted to nothing more than arguments. Huguely said, "We were just going to talk. We were arguing, so it was not at all a nice chat. I shoved her onto the bed and walked away." George Huguely appeared to be in disbelief when the police informed him that Love had died. Huguely repeated, "There's no way she can be dead." Nevertheless, Yeardley Love was dead, and George Huguely was charged with murder. Prosecutors asserted at George Huguely's 2012 trial that he had fatally beaten Yeardley Love after breaking into her residence while intoxicated. After being found guilty of second-degree murder, he received a 23-year prison sentence. Huguely testified midway through his sentence in a wrongful death case, claiming he was unaware of most of the attack on Love. He had no memory of breaking into her room or hurting her. Huguely told the court that his memory was like a slideshow and that 98% of the slides from the night of May 2nd had been vanished, attributing to his excessive drinking at the time. Huguely remarked, "I miss her and think about her every day. I would stop at nothing to get that night back. I should never have gone over to her place that evening, and I accept responsibility for what happened to her." It makes no difference to Yeardley Love's family whether George Huguely intended to kill Love or not. In actuality, he was the one who killed her. Love's mother said, "I know he did kill her. He did. I'm sure of it. I find it hard to believe that someone could possibly do Yeardley any harm. I'm not sure what was going through his mind." Huguely was deemed accountable in the wrongful death lawsuit. Currently serving his time at Virginia's Beaumont Correctional Center, George Huguely is expected to be freed from jail at the age of 42. After 6 years, Jennifer San Marco left the Postal Service in June 2003 due to her reputation for eccentric behavior. Because of psychological issues, she was granted early retirement on the basis of a medical impairment. However, no one expected that the former postal worker would go on to carry out the most brutal shooting at a postal facility in the country in almost 20 years, according to the U.S. Postal Service. San Marco is also linked to the murder of a former neighbor. 54-year-old Beverly Graham's body was discovered in her residence a day after authorities believe Jennifer San Marco opened fire inside the mail sorting center where she used to work. Another woman wounded during the massacre died on Wednesday, bringing the total number of casualties to 8, including San Marco. The shell casings found were identical to those discovered in the postal distribution center. Jim Anderson, the Santa Barbara County Sheriff, informed reporters. He added that, on Monday night, between 7:15 and 8:15 p.m., Graham's neighbors reported to the police that they heard gunshots. According to authorities, San Marco shot 6 postal workers starting at 9 p.m., and then killed herself at the Santa Barbara Processing and Distribution Center. She went through all of the necessary screenings, according to Keith Blackman, a media consultant for the Postal Service and a resident of Milan, New Mexico, where San Marco frequently visited municipal offices. There had been no earlier signs of concerns. Carlos Montoya, the village manager, told the Los Angeles Times, "We felt she was out of balance. Now, violent." Montoya continued, "I suppose it crossed my mind, but just that she would slash a window or damage property or something like that." Before ending up as a postal worker, San Marco, 44 years old at the time, held a position as a Santa Barbara police dispatcher in the middle of the 1990s, after passing a rigorous background check and psychological assessment. Not surprisingly, for an exhausting job with a high turnover rate, she quit after a few months. The Santa Barbara News Press was informed by Police Lieutenant Paul McCaffrey that the job did not include any training with weapons. According to acquaintances, San Marco, who was white, sometimes talked to herself and made racial remarks. While employed by the Postal Service, former plant worker Jeff Tabala reported that San Marcos appeared specifically resentful towards Asians. He asserted that all of the deceased were minorities. There were 3 black people. One was a Chinese American, one was Filipino, and the other one Hispanic. Why San Marco killed her victims is still unclear. However, the U.S. Postal Inspector asserts that it's likely that she knew and selected her victims. Sheriff Jim Anderson of Santa Barbara County claimed that it was unclear whether the deaths were racially motivated. According to officials, it is evident that the shooter had a lengthy history of psychological issues. Due to mental health concerns, her postal job put her on medical leave. After a disturbance in 2003, Tabala claimed to have witnessed sheriff's deputies dragging San Marco in handcuffs from under a mail sorting machine and carrying her away on a mail cart. When she came back a few months later, people began approaching me with complaints about her strange behavior, stated Tabala. She was yelling. She was spewing a lot of racial slurs. It was quite unpleasant. Management led San Marco out of the building, and she never came back, stated Tabala. She appeared to be having conversations even though there was no one around her. Tabala recalled, "She would just be babbling away." According to Eddie Blomfield, Graham's boyfriend, San Marco would frequently walk outdoors and sing loudly, which would cause disputes between the women. Kes Graham Jr., Graham's brother, stated that his sister had complained about a woman who would frequently appear in front of their building and start yelling and raging. When San Marco lost her employment, authorities in New Mexico, where she relocated in 2004, also described her exceedingly erratic behavior. At least twice after San Marcos was accused of harassing an office worker and showing up naked at a gas station, police were notified about her. When the police arrived, however, she was dressed. According to a deputy clerk for the city of Milan, New Mexico, San Marco filed an application in 2004 for a business license for a publication she claimed to be starting, known as the Racist Press. Terry Gallegos remarked, "We had no idea what she was going to do next." During one discussion, she also mentioned wanting to launch a cat food business, according to Gallegos. San Marco was talking to herself as if she was having a disagreement with someone, although no one was around. Last March, office workers contacted authorities after the 44-year-old lady made what Gallegos described as a nasty accusation. At other occasions, according to Gallegos, San Marco would walk in and only stare at a single worker. She was questioned by police in June when a caller at a gas station reported her for being naked. But San Marco was dressed when officers arrived, stated Police Chief Marty Vigil. San Marco left the mail facility on medical leave in 2003 after her co-workers voiced concerns that she might harm herself, U.S. Postal Inspector Randy DeGasperin told reporters on Tuesday. According to DeGasperin, she wasn't threatening anyone or saying anything like that. It was more for her well-being. Officials stated that it was unclear if San Marco came at the postal center with the intention of targeting certain employees on Monday night at around 9 o'clock. Santa Barbara County Sheriff James Anderson stated that she was armed with a 9mm pistol and that she had reloaded at least once while on the spree, according to eyewitness from the crime scene. Among those who were killed included Malika Higgins, 28, and Z. Fairchild, 37, both of Santa Barbara, Nicola Grant, 42, and Guadalupe Swartz, 52, both of Lompoc, and Dexter Shannon, 57, of Oxnard. Following a prolonged hospitalization period, 44 years old Charlotte Colton of Santa Barbara passed away on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Higgins returned from a maternity leave just about a month ago, leaving behind a baby girl and her spouse. She was a talker. Lexi Bushnell, a friend and colleague, told the Santa Barbara News Press that she never stayed quiet. She loved to lighten things up. According to friend Darlene Skura, Swartz was coming out of a dark phase following the death of her husband, Donald, from cancer 3 years ago. Skura told the Los Angeles Times on the Wednesday's interview that she was starting to move on with her life and started becoming more active. According to Grant's neighbors, they frequently saw the married mother of two playing basketball with her children. Leslie Brown, a neighbor and friend, said, "She was such a joy. She simply radiated when you spoke to her." According to police, San Marco drove through a gate behind another vehicle to enter the expansive Santa Barbara Processing and Distribution Center. She entered the facility by stealing the ID badge of a worker at gunpoint. That employee was not harmed. When San Marco arrived, just around 80 out of the roughly 300 employees of the mail processing center were present. When the gunfire started, many of them reportedly ran across the street to a fire station. "I was dumping mail on a belt when the gunshot suddenly went boom, 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 boom," stated postal worker Alger Busante, 56 years old, of Santa Barbara. It had been the deadliest shooting at a workplace since 2003. When 48-year-old Doug Williams opened fire on 14 co-workers at the Lockheed Martin aircraft parts facility in Meridian, killing 6 of them before he turned the gun on himself. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of unsolved cases.